Y is recorded in front of a live studio audience. This is Y, with your hosts, Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling.
So, how long have you guys been doing the show?
Yeah, Jim's technically been doing it longer. Jim was doing it before I came along.
I think we've been doing it for. No, we've been doing it for about 4 years, three and a half years.
Okay, and I guess not. I hope this doesn't sound like it is when I'm saying it, but why you? Why now?
Boy, we ask ourselves that question every day.
I mean, Ben's bona fide is clearly in the picture, which no one else can see. I mean, you are surrounded by the Star Wars canon, and I thought I saw a Batman Shakespeare head.
Yes,
in the
yeah,
background
you
too.
have
yeah. There you go.
Bill Shakespeare.
So what is that?
In fact,
yeah. Oh boy, here we go. Keep your pants on, please.
It does open.
Oh, nice.
Even better.
Get into the.
Does that?
I wish the back of that curtain
Right.
was open.
Just
I'm a little disappointed
fire
now. I was so excited, and
so, but what made you guys say this is something that someone needs to talk about? And damn it, if anyone's going to be doing it, it should be us. Jim, since you've been doing it longer.
Yeah,
all right.
I was going to defer to Jim on that one because he started it. He can start it off, and I'll pick up the ball and run with it after.
Because me and Ben have different stories of how we got here, but then the rivers converged into what they are today. For me, we started the podcast about 3.5 years ago. Myself and some guys, we started a website first called theconguy.com because we were big fans of the Comic-Con conventions, and finding all the information in one spot was not something that you could do. You just had to go looking for it, information about how to attend a convention, how to get tickets, how to get the hotels. I mean, especially with San Diego Comic-Con, it's a year-long effort to try to get there. But and I grew up when I was a wee little lad. I was a nerd. My dad introduced me to comic books. I would mow my aunt's yard on the weekends to get enough money to go pick up my comic book subscriptions. And then I got to middle school to high school and discovered girls and sports. And so comic books went away until I became an adult and realized this is still cool, and there's girls that like it too. So, So I just wanted to keep on doing it. And Ben's got an even more interesting story.
So, yeah, Jim's been doing this since he was a con boy. How long have you been doing this?
Well, man. So I also was a nerdy kid and grew up watching Star Wars and Batman and all these different things, and really embraced that. And I liked women. I wanted women. I just didn't know how to get them. And so I ended up, hanging out with my guys in high school and playing video games and watching, going to midnight showings of Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. And, fast forward a few years, I end up deciding I'm originally from Kansas. And I ended up moving to Los Angeles to pursue a career in acting because it was always my goal to be a walking stereotype. And so I got off a bus with my corncob pipe and my carpet bag. And so I was out in LA, and I had kind of had a little bit of a similar thing where I had decided, well, these are no longer things that I can be interested in. I'm an adult now, and I'm pursuing a career in the arts. And then I got to the arts, and I realized everybody else is a nerd. And, I became friends with comic book artists and directors and writers and the like. And I had always known about San Diego Comic-Con. And one year, a friend of mine, Jim, Chris Copeland. Chris and his brother are both incredibly talented artists, and they have now moved into directing animated features In fact, Justin, Chris's brother, who's also one of our friends and a friend of the show, directed the Batman Hush animated film. And we had him on the show. And these are guys that we've known for years. And so one year, I think it was 2011 or 2012, I said, two buddies of mine and I were like, oh, we're going to drive down to San Diego and check out Comic-Con. I've never been before. I'd never been to a comic, but I'd been to a state fair. Like, that's where I had been. And
tractor pulls, you're the
yeah,
guy.
Exactly. So,
Okay, gotcha.
ooh, I love a good tractor pull. Anyway.
So nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
So I ended up going down to San Diego with a couple of my buddies because Chris, my buddy Chris Copeland, had he had a setup on Artists Alley in the convention center. I had no ticket. I had no hotel room. We were driving down for the day and kind of seeing what happened. And Chris and his buddy, now I think we've passed a statute of limitations for this because it's 9 years ago, but they were like, hey, we're going to go out and grab lunch in downtown San Diego. You can just have our artist badges. Go in and check out the convention center. Go see what it's all about in there. And I went in and was absolutely gobsmacked by what I experienced there. It was all the amazing things that I ever wanted to like, and all the things I never knew I liked, all in one place. And a bunch of people who also liked those same things. So I really got into it. I started getting online and making a bum rush for the badges every year for San Diego Comic-Con like everybody else. Then fast forward a few more years, I started dating a girl and she was really into going to conventions, and she revealed to me that there was this whole scene of smaller conventions happening at all other times of the year, and particularly in Southern California. And that has expanded greatly throughout the rest of the country. You've got smaller comic book conventions, not now, obviously, because we're in, hopefully towards the end of the COVID pandemic, but, the last year has been pretty barren. But prior to COVID, taking over the world, we saw an explosion of all kinds of smaller comic book conventions taking place in towns of 30, 40,000 people, at their, college gymnasiums and stuff like that. And so I started going to all these smaller, Long Beach Comic Book Expo and WonderCon Anaheim, which is the little brother of San Diego Comic-Con, and all these different events. And that's actually where I ended up meeting my now wife, who had also had a very similar experience in not really ever fitting in and then going to a comic book convention the first time and realizing this is everything that I never knew I needed. And so then I had known Jim. Actually, Jim and I attended the same church in Hollywood. And so I started running into...
Hollywood actually has churches, believe it or not.
I don't remember seeing one last time I was there.
And it's full of crazy liberal artists. But so I knew Jim from church, and I'd kind of hit it off with him and his buddy Luke, who is now my buddy, of course, because we talked about Jurassic Park and all this kind of stuff that we loved. And then all of a sudden, every convention I started going to with Brianna, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, we're running into Jim and Luke walking out of panels, walking across the con floor, in restaurants outside of the convention center. And I keep going like, what are you guys doing here? I didn't even know you would come to this sort of thing. And they're like, oh, we're here for our website. And I'm like, you have a website? They're like, yeah. And I think at one point you were like, yeah, we got press badges. And
yeah.
I was like, what?
And that's when the light went on.
Ding, 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 ding.
And then that happened a couple times. And then we'd see him a couple more times, and they were wearing these t-shirts that said The Con Guy. And I'm like, oh, dude, is that your website? And they're like, yeah, it's our podcast now. And I was like, you have a podcast now? And they're like, yeah, you want to come on and be like a guest on the show? And I was like, sure. So I went on, I was on one episode, and then Jim and Luke were basically like, you're a host now.
All right.
And so
and we've held them ever since.
And that was about 3 years ago, maybe a little longer than that. I don't know if you guys had done very many episodes before I came along.
Not a lot.
Maybe
the one thing about the podcast, though, and the reason Ben was such a good fit is we try to keep it a little bit. it is a fanboy, fangirl podcast, but it's also, we want to, it's from the perspective of people who are in Hollywood trying to make a go at filmmaking. So it has kind of like a filmmakers, actors, writers bent to it. We try to do it from that perspective. We don't know if we accomplished that or not, but that's kind of our perspective to try to set it apart a little bit. And like Ben's wife, I don't want to bring her into it, but she is.
I don't want to drag her name through the mud.
I don't want to drag her through this, but she's so perfect for this because their wedding, Ben and Bree's wedding, it was the best wedding. It was a beautiful wedding, outdoor wedding was it Malibu, Ben?
Yeah.
And it was beautiful, but they had such cool elements of fan culture and fandom included including the most amazing first dance I've ever seen when they had lightsabers and it was the Duel of the Fates from Star Wars. And it was amazing, but that was just part of it. It went on forever. I don't know how you guys learned all those moves, but anyways, so we knew that Ben was perfect for the podcast, more perfect than we are. We're working for him now.
The tides turn.
Can my head fit in this shot anymore?
Yeah. So this has become a whole conglomerate multimedia thing.
Empire.
A good word, yes. Empire.
An empire? Well, I don't know. I mean, we hope to be an empire someday, but emperors usually get paid, so there's a big difference.
Empire adjacent, should we say that?
Yeah. There we go. Empire adjacent is
no, but like it's not just Con Guy's part of like we used to be part of the Popcorn Talk network, and then Ben made some connections at a place called That Hashtag Show, which is a great fandom focused website with a lot of podcasts, and so that's where we host our podcast now. I know that Ben's doing a lot of work for them, and we do a lot. We also have the Con Guy as the main podcast. We have the Scare Guy, which is when we bend towards our Halloween themes and our more spooky side, the scarier side of the Con Guy. And just this last week, the website's not quite up yet, we launched our new brand, which was the Con Girls, because we're not all dudes, you know.
Right. Well, and it's sort of that idea of, like you said, sort of not branching out, but sort of expanding your world to include women in a much greater way. In many ways, I think you could say over the past few years that the nerds have won. I mean, Peter Jackson's got an Oscar. Let's just start with that and work our way down. Enya has an Oscar. I mean, come on. So it's interesting. Like, is there still a need? Is there still, it's interesting that there's still this niche, I'm assuming, where you people, and I apologize in advance for using that term.
Who's saying you people? What?
Yeah. It's a chance for fans of this genre to gather and talk. And is that still sort of a rare thing in the world?
What do you think, Ben?
I think one thing that we really try to push for on ours is that we are not haters. We are not here to troll, you know. And I think that's something that's obviously gotten out of control in all aspects. You know, that's gotten out of control socially, politically, as far as, you know, just our discourse in really any arena right now. Everybody wants to be mad at everybody else or be upset about what's going on. And there's for sure a lot to be upset about in the world. But we also have to remember that storytelling is not in that it is so much for entertainment and to bring us release and relief. It is also meant to, you know, send forth a powerful message, I think, in many ways, and is used for that a lot. But, you know, and there are a lot of things in entertainment to be upset about as well, with people coming out about how directors treated them or how companies, you know, treated them or said this or said that and that sort of thing. But there's plenty of that. There's plenty of that out there. And what we try to focus on are the things that we love. And we want to lift up and embrace the stuff that when I was 8 and I sat down and watched Empire Strikes Back on a Saturday afternoon, because that's what I wanted to do that day. and because it made me excited and it made me happy and it filled me with joy. That's the aspect of it that we want to embrace. Star Wars, we love Star Wars. We want to love Star Wars. We love the way it makes us feel. So we're not going to shit all over the new movies, whether we liked them or not, because I've always said none of the new movies ruin Star. Like, I can watch Empire Strikes Back anytime I want, and it's still the Empire Strikes Back. So our big thing is we really, and sometimes we get a little critical and we express opinions on the show that we're like, I really didn't like this. But we always try to come at it from the perspective of, this is the thing that makes our lives, or at least brings excitement, brings joy into our lives, which in so many other areas can be disheartening. And this is what we do to have fun and release and enjoy our free time. And so that's what we're embracing.
Let me jump on that real quick. Ben he said it so perfectly, is that the things that we celebrate on our webcast and our podcasts are they're things that fuel our passions, And when it came to like some of the most recent Star Wars films, we have 6 main hosts. We were kind of split on whether we liked or disliked it. On WandaVision, we were very split, not just a little bit. We had the extremes on our show. We have a brother-sister team on our show. Their last names are the Sams. We call them the Samblings. They're siblings, but their last names are Sam, so they're the Samblings.
Just in case you didn't get that yet, they're siblings.
No, it's perfect. Yeah.
But Derek Sams loved it. His sister, she couldn't stop hating it enough. However, we all still love Marvel, and we say, Marvel, we trust you, and we're sticking with you. Whereas so often, like if you go online, which is a dangerous place to be, but like the fans of DC and the fans of Marvel sometimes don't meet very well, and all they do is fight and tell each other how asinine the other side is. That's silly. I have subscriptions to both sides of that. Well, a lot more than that. Like, there's so many small comic book publishers these days. You don't have to be beholden to just those two. But so we are able to like and dislike some stuff. Like there's a Star Wars movie that just I didn't like at all. There is one. And it's no big secret that I did not like The Last Jedi. But I love
it. It rhymes with.
No, that's what it is. But you know what? I still love. I was able to interview Rian Johnson, the director. He loves Star Wars. So I don't hate Rian Johnson. I don't hate Disney for quote unquote ruining my Star Wars. I don't hate any of that. I love Star Wars. Just the reason I'm a filmmaker was because of the original Star Wars film. And like Ben said, I can still go back and watch those. I still like watching some of the trilogies. I'm one of the rare people. I loved the character of Rey. I thought she was an awesome addition to the Star Wars universe. And I liked her. I liked her story and how it played out. Some people were really big on criticizing it, but let them. Just let them. That's toxicity at its worst. We are, what do you call us? I don't know whatever the opposite is. Positivity at its best. That's us.
So if someone is tuning in, because I know you mentioned like you focus on the California Comic Cons, is the show appealing to people all over the world? Is it really niche to where it's just Californians? If I'm in Detroit, am I going to be like left out of the game?
Probably, because we don't like Detroit very much. But besides that,
there you go.
Wow,
see, there's someone.
First time
finally
someone has crapped on Detroit on the show.
Yeah, because all of our guests.
Why you gonna poop on Detroit, Jim? Come on.
Okay.
I don't know.
They gave us a quarterback, Jim.
No.
Yeah.
Because a guy that I work with at work, one of my supervisors, he's all into Michigan, and I'm like, I just have to poop on it as much as I can, just because it's fun. But no, here's the deal: we are very unashamedly strongest in Southern California. Not gonna lie.
No, that's
we are
cool.
strong.
There's nothing wrong
That's
with
where
that.
we're strongest. We're kind of like a filmmaking type of podcast. However, we have covered New York Comic Con. We have covered Dragon Con out of Atlanta. We have people that facilitate Dragon Con panels and parts of the convention that are on our show talking about it. Some of us are playing. Well, fingers crossed, are attending Dragon Con.
Right.
We've had the Dragon Con report guys. We're part of a network of podcasts that are across the country. We talk. My family lives in South Carolina, and my niece covers Greenville South Carolina Comic Con for us. So we try to hit all of it that we can, but we're not just specifically just conventions. We're about everything that touches those conventions. So we talk a lot about pop culture that would be of interest to those conventions, about topics that would be of interest. We do always look at it through the lens of, is this interesting to convention folks? And like, for example, one of our biggest podcasts ever was Ben hosted a bunch of Power Rangers from all the different years together on a big panel. We had it we've hosted that panel a few times, but Ben was our host. Our other producer, Luke, helped put that together. And it wasn't necessarily about conventions, but it was about the fandom of Power Rangers. And Ben, you did such a good job on that. We're going to do another one of those coming up soon.
Yeah. But for obvious reasons, over the last year, we haven't covered a lot of conventions across the country because there haven't been any. But
Right.
we, in the before times, our show would often involve like a full 5-minute rundown of any comic book convention or the like that was taking place across the United States. Now, worldwide, we wouldn't necessarily cover as many unless, Star Wars Celebration was happening in London or something like that. But as far as the United States, we all come from pretty well across the country. Luke is from Ohio. Jim's originally from like 8 different places.
All over.
Yeah, I'm from Kansas. The Samblings are from West Virginia. Katie is from she's from California. She's from
California, yeah.
But yeah, so we kind of span the country, and so we're all not concerned, but we're all aware of like what's going on, and I personally I'm like stoked. I came from a town that's about half a minute big in Kansas, and I grew up 15 minutes outside of this small city called Hutchinson, Kansas. And they, after I left, they started having this movement of like, there was a petition to change the name of Hutchinson to Smallville, like legally. And
The nerve.
because they claimed that was Smallville, Kansas. Like that's what it was based off of. And I don't know if that's necessarily true, but that's what they decided they wanted. It didn't pass, but I think they did have an official Smallville Day where they ceremonially, renamed the city Smallville for one day, like 3 years ago. And they also host Smallville Comic-Con in Hutchinson, Kansas. And they have for a handful of years now. I think they had Billy D. Williams was like the keynote guest a few years ago.
That's
no joke.
There's no one better.
And so,
We'd go to that.
Yeah, I'd fly in for some.
There you go. So I, and all this kind of happened after I came to LA. So we have had, I think it really started getting embraced a lot when Iron Man got released in 2008 and ended up being good. Like how do you build a franchise the way they have on the back of, at the time, one of the more obscure superheroes from the Marvel comics? Like it wasn't Captain America. It wasn't Spider-Man. It was Iron Man, who nobody knew anything about before they watched the movie, except for the diehards, And then I think that kind of, when that became popular and really showed you can make, I don't want to say grown up, but like a movie that's really great for anybody who wants to go watch it out of this comic book character. It made it okay for those of us who liked that kind of stuff. Then all of a sudden you have all these people that are like, oh, you remember Dragon Ball Z? And you're like, you're a professional athlete. Like, how are you talking about Dragon Ball Z right now? And it kind of exploded. And so that's when that happened. And then people started realizing that comic book conventions were this kind of culmination or this mecca of popular culture that we all secretly liked, but didn't want to admit because it wasn't cool. that created this culture around it, and that's what we really wanted to make this show about, was celebrating and having kind of a central place. So I don't have to go to this website to find, like Jim was saying, this website to find where I can get badges, this website where the special events are going to be, this site where the parties, the specific themed parties, are going to be in San Diego on what night, and then I have to go over here. No, we wanted to bring that all together. We have Katie and I talk about cosplay at conventions, and then Jim looks up what the key panels for if you love this kind of fandom, if you love that kind of fandom. Luke looks at collectibles. Katie will do different outside events, and we all kind of look into, like, we all like to party, so we all looked into, like, what are the parties that you need to go to? This is a Doctor Who party, and this is a Star Wars party. This is where the Marvel stuff is going to be set up. Nintendo's over here. Where do you want to end up on what night of San Diego or WonderCon or New York Comic Con or Dragon Con or wherever you're going? Where do you want to be when? And where can you get all that without going to 8 different places and wasting your entire afternoon and getting fired from your job, and then your partner just divorces you, and then you don't even have money to go to a comic book?
Right.
That's a very
which of those groups with the parties gets the messiest?
It's got to be the autograph, which you don't cover, by the way, in your list. Like, who's covering the stars of the 70s and 80s signing autographs?
That is a solid point.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Because that is a very important section.
Yeah. Heidi, are you volunteering to cover the location of the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders?
Brand new con girl.
To California, and I am in.
Newest con girl.
When you say who parties the messiest, it's got to be the cosplayers. I tell you what, they
don't you think, Rachel?
But like what Ben said, something that's really interesting, and you asked a question earlier about, like, do we need about the proliferation of these conventions and how they've grown. I think it definitely, there's 3 different fandoms that exploded in the last 10 years that kind of like buoyed everything up. It was Marvel, the MCU, starting with Iron Man. That came out in 2008. 2009 is the first year that it was that we had the impossibly long lines where you're camping out all night, and you couldn't get in to Comic-Con. I think it's one of the first years that they sold out and you couldn't get tickets, was 2009. So the next year. What was also happening then, I mean, either right then or very quickly thereafter, was Game of Thrones on HBO, which was a 10-year franchise. And it was also right around that time when Disney bought Lucasfilm and Star Wars, the next trilogy was starting. So those 3 things all started kind of sort of in the same time. They exploded Comic-Cons across the country. And here's the kicker, they all ended in 2019. So we didn't see any conventions last year because of COVID. We're all interested. We're kind of, except for one. I saw one at the beginning of the year. Ben went to a Doctor Who Gallifrey convention. But other than that, we don't know what the future holds yet. And so we're all very curious.
I feel like the universes all knew that this was coming.
Yeah.
That's why they wrapped it up. And
we're done.
Doctor Who fans get sloppy. I
totally believe that. Doctor Who fans would be very sloppy.
There's some untoward activity happening in that TARDIS. Hands down.
Yeah. My wife introduced me to Doctor Who about 5 years ago, and now I'm a hook, line, and sinker fan, so to speak. And she took me to there's a Los Angeles convention called Gallifrey 1. And it happens every year. This was the first year in like 3 decades that it didn't actually occur. But it did end up happening last year because it's in February. And that's a drinking convention. There's a lot of drinking that goes on.
No, you need like a high pressure washer at the end of that weekend. So it's interesting. Both of you very much use the phrase celebrate, and the idea, I think, of the celebration of the art that is all of this, and saying like, well, you cannot be fond of something, you cannot like it, but the fact that it is out there and happening is a good thing. So I am aware of all of these things. I have seen the films. However, how am I supposed to feel about the Zack Snyder cut? Because part of me is like, I don't need to sit through that again.
You know, you have a solid point, and I'll tell you what.
I would agree.
I'm supposed to watch it tonight.
Oh, because like, look, I want to hear Batman say the F word as much as anybody.
True.
But is that worth 2 hours 40 of my life?
Oh, it's 4 hours. The
Four?
Snyder
4
Cut is
hours.
4 one-hour
Come on.
episodes.
Oh, okay. Well, breaking it down like that, I can take that. I've watched longer things in weirder languages. So.
It's true. It's an interesting point because I'm actually through that hashtag show, which I do a lot of media interviews for. Tomorrow evening, I am interviewing some of the digital artists from Weta Digital down in New Zealand who worked on the Snyder Cut, and so I've been sent a screener that I guess I'm going to sit down and watch 4 hours of this evening after I'm off with you guys.
Wow.
And it is that original Justice League, the Snyder Whedon cut, if you will, was difficult to watch and involved a lot of alcohol on my part. And so I'm interested in watching it because they're touting it so much, and I'm always willing to give something a chance. And I love Batman. I really love all the casting for the DCEU, for the Warner Brothers DC live action universe. I like Ben Affleck as Batman. I love Gal Gadot as Wonder.
Someone's been drinking.
Yeah, exactly. I like Aquaman. I like the Flash. I like all of them. I love the casting. And so if they're promising me it's the same movie, but it's been, a lot of changes have been made, I'm like, okay,
right.
We'll take a look at it. I'll give it a chance. And I need to watch it to be knowledgeable about it, to talk to the guys that worked on it. So I figure it's at least it's part of the zeitgeist that I need to be aware of. So I'm trying to go in with an open mind. I don't know how to tell you how to feel about it.
And I'll be honest with you.
Ask me tomorrow.
I've never been a Zack Snyder fan. So, and a lot of people who were not Zack Snyder.
Visionary director, Zack Snyder?
Yeah. No.
Well, I had a friend, I like jokingly say across the parking lot, isn't that visionary director Zack Snyder? And apparently he heard it and did not think it was as funny as they did. But anyway, continue.
No, I don't know. I don't hate his stuff, but it's not like he's a director I follow closely. Like, I liked the movie 300. I thought that was a really fun movie. And then I enjoyed some of his stuff, but I guess when you compare it to some of the greater superhero films, it kind of paled a little. It was always dark and moody and a little bit, I don't know, there's a little bit something. And then we had a friend of ours, she wrote a review of Zack Snyder films for our podcast one time and really made me look at him differently about how she goes, you know what? These films, I'll tell you, they're dark, they're moody, and she goes, they're all very misogynistic, and they have too many rape fantasy type scenes in them. She goes, but you know what? The worst offense is it? They just suck. And I was like, wait a second, because I didn't hate the films. I kind of liked his Batman film. I didn't like the Batman versus Superman. However, I'm just surprised that all these people that were bashers of Zack Snyder before, they are the biggest flag bearers of him right now for this cut. And you know what? I'll watch it. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I will not bash it. I bash some stuff, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. And we'll see. I wonder if it's just a backlash because of the Joss Whedon-ness of it. I don't know.
I was going to say, like, it almost feels a little bit like a put up or shut up. He had to step away from the film for, family stuff and to deal with that. Yep. And so a really terrible kind of triangulation of circumstances that he didn't get to make the movie he wanted.
Right.
Is this the chance to be like, no, it's going to be good. It's going to be the movie I wanted to make originally, which for someone I'm assuming had Final Cut on Sucker Punch, I don't know how much I want to take his word.
Well, true.
I bet you this is the best Zack Snyder film we've ever seen. That's it. My own personal.
Put that on the poster.
The
There you
best
go.
Yeah,
Zack
that should be on the poster. It's better than the Coast is Toast.
I like the Coast is Toast. What movie was that?
That was Volcano.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Was that the Tommy Lee Jones?
I
No,
live just up the street from the La Brea tar pits, so you know
Oh, lovely.
Nice.
That's a lovely part of
I'm
town.
I'm
I
dead
love
if
my
that ever
road.
happens.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's that's one of those ones I can't decide if I feel like I have to watch it because everything I'm reading is sort of going back and sort of filling in the shading in the colors of what was going on behind the scenes,
Yeah.
how Joss Whedon is perhaps not the person who everybody thought he was. Like there's all this sort of rewriting of, well, wait a second, you missed out on a few things, or you didn't know about a few things. But it's still, I don't know. I mean, and what is it with DC as well, while we're on the subject? They can't get out of their own way. I feel like so many of those movies, I go in being like, all right, this is good. I can get here. I'm enjoying this. And then there's something that's just a bridge too far.
Mhm.
Whereas Marvel, I will happily take in and accept and enjoy the weirdest, trippiest, bizarrest,
Yeah.
the Doctor Strange, where you're like, that was great. I have no idea what happened, but that was great. And now you bring Sam Raimi into this, and you're like, this is going to be great. I know, noted Michigander,
Yes,
Sam
once you
Raimi.
bring Sam Raimi in, a fellow Detroiter,
There you go. I feel like the end.
which, by the way, Justice League was filmed in this godforsaken town.
Well, it was up in Detroit.
Or wait, no, or was it Batman versus Superman? Batman versus Superman was filmed.
Oh, okay.
So I guess actually, so it's nice to know that I am not alone in feeling some apprehension about approaching the new Justice League film. What is there in the next year to look forward to?
Suicide Squad Part 2.
Is it going to be better than Part 1?
Oh yeah, James Gunn took it over.
Well,
That's right. Okay.
It's kind of a soft reboot. Like it's
Okay, this is my issue with all of them because I love them all. And all your talk of when I was in high school, girls wouldn't date me because of comic books. I only dated guys who read comic books.
Where were you
Not
in
that
high
anyone-
school? Come on.
She was having
In
ice cream with
Detroit.
David Lee Roth. Yeah.
I was in Detroit. But why all the origin story reboots? Why? Why can't we evolve the stories? Why do we always start again when we recast? That's dumb.
Superman
you
2
wanna
is
build
better than
people who-
Superman 1.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
If you want to build the love, you got to get past like the Waynes dying in the alleyway.
Yeah.
well, and I think part of that is, and if I may really take a quick step back, you said why can't DC get out of their own way? And I guess this plays into what
Yes.
we're currently talking about. I think it's because with the big flagship tentpole cinema feature film movie releases, they're way too precious with it. They're way too precious with it. And if you look at Warner Brothers DC animation, it's
hmm
brilliant. It's
Yep.
absolutely brilliant, from their feature film animated features to the Harley Quinn cartoon series to anything that they make. And it's because I don't have any inside information, but I feel like it's because the studio heads are like, well, it's a cartoon. Who cares? Just let them do whatever they want. And these guys and girls that are writing it are fans of the material. And they're like, yeah, we're going to do it. It's like once they get to live action, big screen cinematic releases, they're like, okay, we have to be really careful with this. And we're the CEO studio heads. Let's get our fingers all in this and not let people who
It's interesting you say that.
love
That's-
material take care of it. You see that in animation, and it does great. I think that's why Feige has been so successful at Marvel, because he lets people who really are passionate about the material, and he himself is really passionate about directing.
He's a comic book nerd.
You know, where it's going.
Mm.
And you have people like Jeff Johns over at DC that have done great Batman comics and have done great storylines on paper and have done animation. He got involved with the TV show, the live action TV shows, which, by the way, DC live action TV is great more often than not. But the movies, they're just way too precious with it. And I'm sorry, Luke, you were saying it's interesting to say that.
No, I was gonna say it's interesting because I feel like the one of the DC films that worked the best for me was Birds of Prey, which was very not precious with the characters and that world and building it.
And I think,
and that's the one I spent the whole movie being like, is this as good as I think it is? Is this enjoyable as I think it is?
if you told me 10 years ago DC's going to build an extended universe like Marvel is doing and an expanded movie universe, the best 4 films to come out of that are going to be Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Shazam, and Birds of Prey, I would have told you. And they also will have a Superman, a Batman versus Superman, and a Justice League movie in that mix. And those will be the 3. I mean, Superman, Man of Steel was decent, but those are going to be like the 3 bottom ones.
Yeah,
Wonder Woman and Shazam are going to be at the top, basically, and Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey, I loved. I would have told you were nuts.
Yep.
But it's the lesser known characters. They're like, okay, whatever, do whatever you want. We're going to focus on Batman and Superman. And they're too precious with Batman and Superman. And this whole marketing thing of like, you know what? Oh, Batman's going to say the F word. What? Who cares? What are you talking about? Like, that's a selling point?
No, I don't care at all.
I don't really. Is that what they're? I didn't know that was part of the marketing.
It was like,
is that true?
I don't know if it's part of the marketing, but it was like a big thing. They're like, oh, people are excited. Batman's going to say the F word in this movie. And I'm like,
didn't he
And
already
then they have to sit through
say it?
another 3 hours and 59 minutes, and it's going to be
Well, but where did he also say the F word? Was it like, what was the DC Universe streaming? They had, what was it? Maybe Titans or something. There was a DC show on there where Robin said the F word.
Titans.
He said F.
Of course, Robin
He said
did.
F.
Yeah,
Batman.
He's like, well, yeah. In Titans, they drop the F bomb a lot. That's very much adult language, and in the Harley Quinn cartoon as well, which is fantastic. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. But the next question was, what do we have to look forward to? That's where we were moving on to, right? And Suicide Squad is a soft reboot. They brought in James Gunn. That was after he got fired and before he got rehired to do more Guardians of the Galaxy. But it kind of goes hand in hand. And I have about 2% apprehension because it kind of feels the same way with like, well, Joss Whedon did great with Avengers. Let's put him on Justice League. I don't want it to be, well, James Gunn did great on their weird, outside the lines, character ensemble, action comedy. Let's put him on ours. But I think James Gunn has just taken the ball and run with it. And if you look at the materials they've released for the new Suicide Squad movie, he just went straight up comic book. He's like, their costumes are going to look like their costumes in the comic books. Exactly like what they look like in the comic books. And they're going to be silly and weird. And it's going to be, the grown up version of what we wanted to see when we were kids, basically. So I'm excited about that. What else is coming out, Jim? What else do we have to look forward to?
Shazam 2.
Shazam 2. Zach Levi, gotta love him. Nerd icon.
Yep.
right.
And Henry Cavill's going to be in it.
And apparently, that's the word on the street now. Well, news which that hashtag show initially broke, by the way.
There you
Henry
go.
Cavill was going to be in.
I don't know what else they got. Oh, the new Flash movie.
Yeah, Flashpoint.
Which I think I'm kind of apprehensive about because who's the star? What's his name?
Ezra Miller.
Didn't he also write it, or didn't he like demand a writing credit? And he's been
a bit problematic recently too.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. It's not been it's not been easy sailing. It's kind of like back when they made the second Hulk. Edward Norton was very problematic making that, and you notice he's not Hulk anymore.
Yeah.
I did notice that. Yeah.
And we do have, we've got Doctor Strange 2 coming out. We still have yet to see the Black Widow movie released, which they've been promising us for a while. I'm intrigued by how that's going to be, because now, has it been built up too much is the next question. We've got Star Wars. We've got a Boba Fett TV series coming out that's a spinoff of The Mandalorian. We've got, what else is there? There's
all the Marvel streaming stuff on Disney Plus. Because is it next week we start The Falcon and the Winter Soldier? In June we get Loki. So those are going to be. They're really they know what they're doing over. They know what they're doing on that side of the house. And Marvel has gotten back the licensing rights to the shows which they at one time licensed over to Netflix. Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. They've got all those rights back.
Punisher.
Defenders. Punisher, yeah. So we'll see what they're going to do with that. Apparently, Matt Murdock, who plays
Matt
Murdock. He is Daredevil.
No, yeah.
Daredevil, right, yeah.
He's going to be in the next Spider-Man movie as a lawyer. So it's just this web. Get it? This web.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Last question for me. Comic-Con has always been seen as the chance for these franchises and these films to launch and sort of tease something and let it out to the kind of uber fans who are there, who then go home and are like, oh my God, you've got to see this. I saw this thing. And what do they do this year? If they can't have a Comic-Con, how do they get this stuff out in the hands and in front of the right people who love and appreciate these characters and these worlds as much to really kind of build the hype?
Through these guys' podcast.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay.
Well, they're still gonna have the online, the Comic-Con at home, which is very much smaller in scope and whatnot. And San Diego has announced they're going to try to have a November event, a smaller event, a Comic-Con on the small side. But not luckily, I hate it, but coincidentally, no films have really been released this year. There's been no Comic-Con, so they haven't really wasted any of their marketing push. But I do think that towards the end of the year, we might start seeing some conventions, but they might have to do the old-fashioned thing and start buying advertisements again. I don't know. I know that
Are you guys gonna
go ahead?
Sorry, no. Are you guys going to be sleeping outside your living room in anticipation for the Comic-Con at home?
Absolutely. We're gonna just be out there now. No, it was interesting. The whole phenomena, the online convention last year actually afforded us as I've been calling us the little podcast that could, because we're not huge, we're trying to build up and we would love to build up into kind of a con related media empire, to use your word, Luke.
Thank you.
My word, but that's okay.
What?
Okay.
Fine.
Wait, what?
We sound so much alike.
Was it yours?
Yeah,
It was fine.
Well, as we said, International Women's Day is over, so
Right.
Yeah.
Oh no.
My apologies. But we would love to build this up into something that we could do full time. And one of the opportunities that came for us was we had submitted to do our Power Rangers panel at San Diego Comic-Con for several years. And we had done it at WonderCon, which, as I mentioned before, is like the little brother. It's the same company. They just do it in Anaheim. It's a slightly smaller convention, but you kind of get almost the same experience with less people. And we were able to do our Power Ranger panel there in 2019, Jim? I think it was 2019. We did our Power Ranger panel at WonderCon.
Sounds about right.
Seems so long ago. And we ended up getting, how many did we get? Like 300-400 people to come to that panel?
Yeah,
it blew our mind.
Great panel.
And then we did that same panel with different Power Rangers at Los Angeles Comic-Con. That one was different because they put us on like 10 a.m. Sunday morning, which was weird.
That was bizarre. Yeah.
And then the next year we did it online at WonderCon at home with some different Power Ranger guests. And then we finally got into San Diego Comic-Con 2020 on their Comic-Con at home as a digital panel. And Jim, I don't know when the last time you checked what the numbers were, but hadn't we gotten out to 5 digits of people at some point as far as...
Yeah. we're over 30,000 people in that.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
like, if you had visit us or at one of the conventions, we'll get 300 or 400 people in the room, but 25,000 to 30,000 people online.
Yeah.
That's really good. And that's a great panel. And so it has been there's been a benefit to the at-home stuff. There really has been. And we've been able to book some guests we never would have been able to book. We've been doing a lot of interviews of directors and directors and stars of shows, and it's just been a lot of fun, and it's I don't know. We did, for example, last week we had and Ben was on there, we had Lou Ferrigno Jr. and about couple months ago we had Arnold Schwarzenegger's son. We should have got him on the same show and had him arm wrestle. That would have been great.
You just want to get Arnold's son and Lou Ferrigno Jr. We'll just sit down and watch Pumping Iron with them and be like,
that'd be awesome. Or you could just really mess with them and sit them down and make them watch Over the Top.
Oh yeah.
Like totally derail them to like, why are we watching this ridiculous movie about arm wrestling?
I am interested to see how this November event that San Diego Comic-Con is putting on. We know literally nothing about it. They just said we're planning on putting on a smaller event in November. That's it. We don't know how many people are going to be. We don't know where it's going to be. We assume in San Diego. We don't know what they're going to have there, what kind of activities, what kind of events, presentations, whatever. But they just said we're looking at trying to have they've kind of been more confident than that, actually.
But what we do know is that the available space to have a convention at the convention center, the only available space is the weekend of Thanksgiving. So I booked my hotel already.
There you go.
But it's refundable because it's like spinning a wheel and throwing a dart right now because nobody knows when it's going to happen. We're just kind of like, we'll see what happens.
Let me ask the hosts really quickly. I have a question
Well.
for the hosts, if I may. Have either of you been to a comic book convention?
Many.
Okay.
Oh,
never
not,
San Diego,
no.
but I have been to many in Detroit.
There you go.
I think we've covered like Detroit Comic Cons, haven't we? Or at least
sure we have
done little announcements and reviews.
Yeah, there's the Motor City Comic Con.
Yeah, Motor City, yeah.
Now I
I've been
keep
to the
seeing
Motor City one. I met Michael Wayne Foster at the tiny one in Monroe.
Oh,
That's
there
how
you
I
go.
met.
I'm telling you, I love the tiny Comic Cons. The San Diego Comic Con is the giant industry one, and it's fun, but it's hard. It's just you're pushing your way through 200,000 people. But when you go to some of the smaller ones, man, I love you can meet the artists, you can meet the people. Like we have talked when we talked to Gary Busey Jr. at one of these smaller Comic Con.
You and all your juniors.
Yeah.
Well,
You're like all
the seniors can't get out anymore. But it's great. I love those small conventions.
Well, I think the small ones are like the true fans too, right? Like even like obviously Motor City Comic Con's nothing compared to San Diego, but it's a decent size event that draws the masses. But when you go to the little tiny one in Monroe, which is down at the bottom corner of Michigan, it's all like straight up people that know every detail of everything that's ever been done. So it's a different experience.
Well,
but you don't get like Face from the A-Team at the one in Monroe. You do get him in Detroit.
Nice.
Antonio Sabato Jr.
Junior.
Yeah.
Gary Busey's son is actually named Jake Busey.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It is. Oh, I
There's no
remember
junior.
Jake Busey.
There's no
No,
junior.
junior. And Jake Busey is my nemesis.
Really? He freaked
Everybody
me the
needs
hell
one.
out when he was in that awful TV version of The Stand years ago, like back in the 90s. Scared the crap
He's
out
not
of
really my nemesis, but it's kind of funny because there was one summer where I went to a couple of different auditions and he kept showing up and like bumping me in the line, but it wasn't his fault. He had no idea it was happening. The casting director was like bumping me for Jake Busey to go in ahead of me. And then his wife did my makeup on a commercial I shot last year. And so I told her, I told her the story about that happened. I was like, Jake Busey is my nemesis. And then I went and like shot part of the commercial and came back to makeup. And she's like, I texted Jake. He had no idea they were doing that to you.
A likely story. It's like, don't
Yeah,
you know who my dad is? I look just like him, sort of.
Well, Jim and Ben, thank you so much for your time. This was super interesting. Best of luck with all the spin-offs, the Con Girls, and Ben, you are in our thoughts and prayers as you sit down for the next 4 hours.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
For more information on the Con Guys, to stay up on your con news, check out their website, theconguy.com, and you can find their podcasts, The Con Guy, The Con Girls, and Scare Guy, all wherever you get your podcasts. So check them out.
You can follow us on all the various socials. Our website is whythepodcast.com and has all sorts of additional stories and videos. It's also where you can sign up for our newsletter. We're also on YouTube, if you're into that kind of thing. And don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, because if you don't, we'll call your mother and tell her that she's completely right. You would look so much prettier if you smiled more.
Why the Podcast is part of Mudhouse Media. Today's show was produced by myself and Heidi Hegquist. Our reluctant executive producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing executive producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our graphic designer is Samantha Mustonen. The theme song was performed by the Electrosynth-O-Magnetic Polyphonic Orchestra. This one's for Philippe. Thanks for joining us. Flash, we're coming home.
Nigel, is that you? Are you here, Nigel?